Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with me today. I am joined by our colleagues who are going to gather around and be a part of our press release this morning. Let me introduce you to Chief David Brannon from the Winter Haven Police Department, Jim Alinsky from the Haines City Police Department, Chief Velasquez from the Lake Wells Police Department, Chief Andy Ray from the Auburndale Police Department. We have Dr. Mary Ann Thomas once again from One More Child. We have Misty LaPerriere from Selah Freedom. We also were joined by DCF, who worked with us on this operation, and Heartland For Children. And it all started with Operation March Sadness 2, 2022, on the 8th of March. Now, we don't think basketball should be able to dominate March by itself, so we have our own bracket, but instead of brackets of winners, we have brackets of losers. And we're going to go over and tell you some of the absolute, not only sadness, but craziness that we saw during this last operation. But I am eternally grateful for our police chiefs, because we wouldn't be able to do this unless we all work together, and my fantastic detectives that work so very hard, and certainly our counselors, because they join us in every operation. They work a lot of hours so that they can be there the instant that we identify and help us identify the victims of these human operations. It's unbelievable, the victims we get with our human trafficking operations. And we identified one this time that I'll talk about without her name. Many times it takes follow-up investigation by this wonderful team of counselors in order to get there. But let's start with Mr. Finley. Mr. Finley is not involved in this from a human trafficking / prostitution operation, but we hit a grand slam in that we also found child sex predators. And he's the first child sex predator that we identified. He's 39 years of age. He's a handyman. He's from Mulberry. And he traveled to our undercover location thinking he was going to engage a very young child for sex. Newsflash, it wasn't a very young child, it was a group of detectives. He's been charged as a result for traveling, for resisting arrest. That's right, he ran from us. He didn't want to go to jail. He had meth. He was also charged with attempted lewd battery and transmission of some very ugly stuff that he thought was going to a 13-year-old child. So it would have been a grand slam week for all of our resources and efforts if we'd have just gotten Timothy Finley, who thought he was traveling to meet a child. It's pretty nervy if you think about it. He was showing up at the child's residence when he thought mom and dad weren't there. But he wasn't alone. Then there's Shannon Johnson. He's 41. He's from Orlando. You know, it's interesting, the Orlando stations aren't here today. They should be, because they got a lot of these problems over in Orlando, and the community over there needs to be made aware of it. He thought he was communicating with a 13-year-old child. He wanted to be her daddy. He wanted to have different kinds of sex with what he thought was a 13-year-old child. He works at a warehouse. He was charged with traveling, attempted lewd battery, transmission of photos of himself, nude photos, you know what I mean? And he didn't have any children himself, but he wanted to play this game of daddy. That's right, he has a criminal history. And when we arrested him, he said, "You got me. You're right. We got him." So if we'd arrested 2 child predators, that would have been a grand slam week. But we got another one. This guy's from Gainesville. He's employed in construction. He did not travel, but he communicated with what he thought was a 14-year-old child online and said, "Don't tell the cops." And then he sent videos and stills of himself doing things an adult should never do in the presence of a child or publicly or recorded for public consumption. Nasty stuff. Rose here, Jody Rose, is a nasty, nasty guy. He's 36 years old. So we traveled to Gainesville to get him. Or we had the Alachua Sheriff's Office travel for us to get him. When we arrested him, he said, "It's just a misunderstanding." Maybe a misunderstanding on his part. It's not a misunderstanding on our part. He was sending nasty videos and photographs to children. No criminal history up until now, but now he's got 11 felony charges, so he made up for lost time with his arrest. That would have been a grand slam if we'd only gotten 3. Then there's Xavier Jackson. He's 27. He thought he was chatting with a 14-year-old, and he sent photos of himself doing things that's totally inappropriate. He did not travel, so once again, the Orange County Sheriff's Office assisted us, and because he's from Orlando, and traveled to arrest him, where he was charged with 3 counts of harmful material and 1 count of unlawful communication. Oh, did I mention that he just happens to be a lifeguard at the Polynesian Resort for Disney? You think there's a few children around there? That's right. I didn't stutter. He was a lifeguard at the Polynesian Resort for Disney and was bragging about that. So we were able to arrest 4 predators in this operation. This is huge. 4 arrests of this magnitude in a week is simply remarkable. But let's move on. These guys weren't predators, but they all have something in common with the last arrest. They work for Disney. So you have Wilkeson Fidel. He's 24. He lives in Orlando. He thought he was coming for sex. He's been a Disney employee for 4 years, and he works at the Cosmic Restaurant in Tomorrowland. Except now he is in the county jail if he hasn't made bond yet. And then there's Shahab Malav. He's 27. He's a software developer for Disney. He's worried because he's here on a work visa from India. He thought he was coming to have sex with 2 ladies. Surprise, once again, undercover detectives. Then there's Ralph Lease. He's 45. He lives in Winter Garden. He's an IT employee for Disney. He's been there about 4 years, and he's married. So I'm sure Disney's not pleased. I bet his wife's not pleased, but we're pleased that we arrested him. I'm going to tell you about a trafficker. It's not often we arrest traffickers at the undercover site, but we did. And normally when we arrest traffickers at the undercover site, it's a male. Let me introduce you to Tiffany Nash. She was the trafficker of a young lady. Tiffany's 32 years of age. Why she's not been busy committing crime, because she has 61 previous criminal charges, 41 of them felonies and 20 as misdemeanors. She's the manager of the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Orlando. Now, I just don't believe I'd want any finger-licking good chicken that she touched. Just saying. What she does is she would set up the deal. And then she would force this young lady, this victim, to come along. This deal was for $300. If this lady were lucky, she would get $20. So the lady, the victim, Ubered over, followed by Tiffany to make sure that the deal went right, and Tiffany got her money. As soon as we took the victim down, ostensibly for an arrest, this wonderful team determined she's a victim. So she's not criminally charged, and she's not up here on this board because she's immediately turned over and treated as a victim, not a criminal suspect in an event. So Tiffany's been charged with human trafficking, deriving proceeds, possession of cocaine, possession of meth, possession of paraphernalia, and guess what? She's not managing the Kentucky Fried Chicken place today. She's in our county jail. And we don't serve finger-licking good chicken there. The victim has been turned over for services. Then we have Daniel Peters, 66 years old. He thought he was coming for a girlfriend experience, kind of a date. He went on an escort site. Oh, can I show you the other picture of Daniel Peters? This is the Honorable Daniel Peters, who is a retired judge from Cook County, Illinois, or the Dishonorable Judge Peters from Cook County, Illinois. And when we were doing our follow-up investigation to validate all of this, what did we find out? He also retired from the Cook County Sheriff's Office, according to him. That's right. He said he was a special assistant in legal affairs, and he worked, are you ready for this? In the Office of Professional Regulations, where he was the director. You're kidding me, right? No, I'm not kidding you. As my old daddy would have said, that's a known fact. He said, quote, I've been on the other side of this. Well, I'd like to ask him today, so which side do you like best? Now that you have been the prosecutor, you've been the judge, you've been at the state attorney's office, and now you're the defendant. So we locked him up in the county jail. He says he lives in Palos Hills, Illinois. He requested an attorney. Well, Judge, you need an attorney. You got problems. He went to the jail in Polk County. Then there's Richard Jackson. He thought he was coming for sex. This guy wouldn't be particularly interesting out of the group. He lives in Orlando, but he worked at a family amusement park called the Fun Spot, around children, around a lot of people. So we thought it's worthy for people to know, if you go to the Fun Spot, if they still employ him, you need to know that he will do illegal things for money. And then there's Nelson Cruz. You know, we got this thing going with with food restaurants. He is a manager of a restaurant as well, Cracker Barrel in Altamont Springs. He's married. He's worried as well because he's here on a work visa from Honduras. He thought he was coming to have sex. Now, he lives in our county, but obviously he hasn't got the message yet. You know why he said he did this? Are you ready for this? He had an argument with his wife. So he decided that I'll just go have an event with a prostitute. I bet his wife's not happy. I'm just guessing. He's arrested. And we don't serve Cracker Barrel at the jail, so he won't have to worry about seeing delicious food, only nutritious food. And then there's James Compton. He's 42. He's a graphic designer. He wanted to have all kinds of sex, and he wouldn't be particularly interested, except for the fact his 17-year-old son was refereeing a youth soccer game across the street. Hey, I guess he just got tired, right? Let's see. My son's refereeing this youth soccer tournament. I don't have anything to do. I think I'll go across the street and have sex with a prostitute. There's you, an all-American dad. So he has a criminal history back in 1998 for lewd battery. So the night's wrapping down. We have arrested this child predator who resists us and runs, so we have to tase him. And as is our protocol, when you tase someone, you have an ambulance run an EKG strip to make sure everything's all right. So we have to call an ambulance to the scene, and a fire truck shows up. We've got another undercover deal, cooking. So our undercover people try to blow off the deal. Hey, we'll do it tomorrow. Here's the deal. There was a guy by the name of Seth Phillips and Christina Garrett coming from Bradenton. Christina is Seth's girlfriend. Follow this now. Coming from Bradenton, where they're to be paid $1,000 to have sex with two undercover people. They think this is going to be $1,000 in their pocket. They're going to have sex. Going to be a great evening. However, Seth left his wife at home while he shows up with his girlfriend. So he gets in the area. We have the guy resist. Now we got to have the fire trucks there and the ambulance and the EKG strips. So we text, our undercovers text and say, hey, the cops are here. Told them the truth. Ambulance is here, fire trucks here. We'll do it tomorrow night. Seth, who's a former Marine and a Lyft driver, is not happy. So here's what he says. I'm mad. I've come all the way over here for $1,000, and now you're blowing me off. You are going to pay me $100 for the ball of meth. You are going to pay me $500 for the cancellation. If not, you better have a lot of friends with guns and a chopper. You'll sleep well if you pay knowing that the boogeyman won't come. And then he continued to threaten. And guess what? He showed up. That's right, the ambulance had cleared out, fire trucks had cleared out. We'd shut the operation down for the night. The detectives were in the house when they noticed on the camera, a car pulls up. This guy gets out of the car along with Christina. He does not walk to the house. He sprints to the house, gun in hand. You see where this is going. So our detectives, who are simply the very best, they say to themselves, "Self, we think we ought to have a gun, since this guy has just arrived gun in hand." We open the door with 4 of our guys with guns, and he's got a gun above his head. He's coming down with his gun. Christina saves his life by jumping in front of him. He puts the gun in his waistband, so we don't know if he's bringing it down to point it at us or he's counting 4 guns and he brings it down to put. It is that close to a shooting. Microseconds. We take him into custody. He's charged with 4 counts of aggravated assault with a firearm, attempted robbery, possession of meth, extortion by threat. Christina's charged with prostitution and possession of heroin. And he made the statement during the interview. He became totally cooperative at this point and said, "You would have been right to shoot me." Well, I appreciate his understanding of the gravity of the situation. But because our detectives did exactly what was right, and because Christina got in the way, and she gets credit as well for him being alive today, because this was a very tough situation. I'm going to turn the podium over real quickly to first Chief Andy Ray, a dear friend of mine and a professional, consummate professional law enforcement executive, as are my other friends and colleagues here today, for a few comments. Chief.
Thanks, Sheriff. Good morning. Just like to point out the hard work of the detectives from the Sheriff's Office and from our agencies that assisted them as well. I know how much work goes into this. It's a ton of work, and so great job for everybody that was here and working on the case. I also like to point out, like the Sheriff did, that we don't just do it as a law enforcement agency. We also have other agencies that are in the business of helping children and victims in cases like this. So Selah Freedom, One More Child, the Department of Children and Families, Heartland For Children. Everybody is involved in this because it's important and because the victims of human trafficking and the sex business deserve our help and need our help. So we're glad to be a part of it. We're glad to look out for the interests of kids and of the victims in these cases. And we're happy to be a part of taking people off the street that are dangerous to your kids in the community. So thanks for the opportunity, Sheriff, to work with you, and it's always a pleasure.
Good morning. Same as Chief Ray, we do appreciate the Sheriff always asking us to come over and participate in these events. It's not hard for us to find volunteers, even though it's a lot of hard work and hours, but we always have plenty of detectives, just like the detectives from all the other agencies. They're great people. They come out here to work hard. And as you can see, this is not one city that is an issue at, it's across the county and people coming into our county. So we have to keep this up and make sure we protect these victims. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So as the Sheriff said, I believe we got 4 actual predators this time, and no matter how long these events take place, I don't know how long it's going to take before people understand that Polk County is not going to tolerate it. So just one predator would have been worth the event. So I just want to thank the Sheriff. He's always asking for additional help, and I want to thank him. Thank you for having us there, and we will continue to do these events. I'm confident of that. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Thomas, and I am the Senior Director of Anti-Trafficking for One More Child. We are invited back year after year by Sheriff Judd, and I am honored and grateful that he invites us in to do work right alongside victims the minute they are recovered. Like he said, we help in identifying victims when they are recovered, and the minute that they are, we are able to sit down with them. We are able to explain services that are out there for them, explain what the next steps are for them, and walk them away from that situation. This time we were able to get a trafficker, and that really makes my heart so happy. And on that note, I want to speak to you on that level as someone who has been that person. Sheriff Judd alluded to a lot of these girls are also victims, and they just didn't identify. So I want to speak to my sisters and brothers out there. Are you tired yet? I know you're listening. Please come in. Please understand these are people who care. This is law enforcement who is on your side. Come in and talk to them. They want to help. Thank you so much for having us every year. I really appreciate it.
Good morning. My name is Misty LaPerriere, and I am the law enforcement liaison for Selah Freedom. First and foremost, I want to give a big thank you to Sheriff Judd and all of the agencies that collaborated on such a big operation, and all of your tireless hours and efforts put in to remove predators from our streets and help protect our kids. I think this is very unique in the sense that Sheriff Judd does invite in victim advocates, as Mary Ann had shared, to be able to meet with the victims right there on scene and offer services. As we know, sometimes it takes 8 to 10 points of contact before somebody is ready to get help and get out of the life. So we will continue to make contact, even with those who maybe did not admit a history of human trafficking, to find out what services are needed if they are wanting services. So again, I just want to say thank you for inviting us out, and again, for all the time and effort that you guys put into these operations. So thank you.
I also want to thank Wesley and Ashley Barnett, who are philanthropists in the community. They have a care and a concern for these victims of human trafficking. They agreed to accompany me on Friday night, and they saw firsthand the evil that is occurring in society, and they have this deep care and concern for our community and for the victims in our community, and I appreciate you both being there so very, very much. Are there any questions?
Sheriff, without giving away too many details on how the sting operations work, just to clarify, do your detectives infiltrate websites and set up these dates, or?
All of the above. Social media sites, dating sites, escort sites. We go into all the various sites, and we're joined by my colleagues, by the detectives from the police department, so we can cover dozens of locations in order to effectively communicate with not only the predators, that was an additional bonus this time, not only the Johns, but also the victims and the potential victims. We know some of these ladies we arrested for prostitution denied being victims. However, there will be follow-up by this wonderful team of folks, because we know some of them are victims that would not admit to being a victim. So it was a wonderful day when we found one that admitted to being a victim, because that's not normal. Normally they have to work with these folks for weeks and months before they'll agree for services, but this one agreed to services immediately. So we go looking where they are, where they're out scouring the web pages themselves for customers or victims. And these Johns, there's a significant fine for them to pay, because you think about it, without them, these victims wouldn't be there.
Sheriff Judd, is there any difference in charges when people are agreeing to meet with undercover investigators that are posing as children versus actual children?
Well, certainly the charges would be enhanced if they were to have met with a child. But if it weren't for our detectives and there was a child being groomed, then they would have actually met and sexually abused a child. And sometimes we know those children end up dead after that encounter because the folks don't want to get caught. So we have the traveling charges, we have the using the computer charges, the harmful material charges, the attempted lewd battery charge if they travel, but certainly if it were to be a real child, then we would have a huge victim here among us. So we're online to stop them from getting to children. And there were 4 people who were trying, 2 of them were trying to groom the child. They weren't traveling at the time. The other 2 actually traveled. So we protected some little girl someplace that was groomed or potentially groomed by these evil, deviant criminals. Thugs. That's all they are. They're dangerous people.
Sheriff, sounds like this victim that you guys did get is kind of lucky that she got busted in this situation, right? Like, what she just said, it's hard to find these victims. For her to get found by you guys during this bust, how lucky is she?
Well, she's really lucky, and we're lucky that she admitted right up front. Think about it. This this trafficker followed her there. She was charging $300. If she was lucky, she gets 20. So the person gets 20, the trafficker gets 280. The trafficker also gives her drugs and threatens her with a firearm, had threatened to shoot her and threatened her with violence on numerous occasions if she didn't do this. So she's not only being psychologically threatened, she is being threatened with significant injury or death, as well as playing with her mind with drugs. And what amazes me is we could do another operation starting next week and fill this board up again. And be sure of one thing. These chiefs and I will do just that. We'll be back. And if you violate the law, we're going to take you to jail. That's a guarantee. Whether you're a judge, a Kentucky Fried Chicken manager, a Cracker Barrel manager, or any other profession, or no profession at all, we'll put you in jail. That's a guarantee. Anything else? Thank you very, very much for being with us today. Thank you, Chiefs.